Hello friends, subscribers, welcome back to Daniel's Tech World here on YouTube. My name is Daniel Rosehill. This is my technical corner of the internet here on YouTube, although this video is also going to be distributed over some different video streaming platforms such as Rumble and maybe BitChute. I'm not sure that's a good idea to post on BitChute, but certainly I'll put this up on Rumble as well, and we will see why Daniel's Tech World is joining the Rumble universe. Or maybe I'll put it on my just my regular channel. Anyway. Been doing a lot of videos lately about optical media and archiving. Stuff like the technical weeds, as some people would call it, calculating checksums and what type of dyes are used in different archival media and what's the difference between Verbatim's Gold, archival CDs and the Data Life Plus. And all these things are, matter to the folks I'm speaking to here who are interested in data preservation and archival, but for most people these things are just crazy boring tech details. But what I wanted to do today is take this up a level and talk about why this stuff matters, keeping your own data if you are a content creator, publishing your content through platforms. So I call this content creation for the risk adverse and the generally distrustful. I've put together a Google slide, which is kind of the only way I can really get my thoughts in a coherent order, even though I feel like I'm playing into the death by presentation dynamic here by doing so. But please, I don't usually promote my videos in any way, including sharing them. I'm very lazy about that. But this one is important, I would say. This is my thinking in January 2024 on something that I think really matters, and that is data preservation, digital archiving in the age of censorship, and free speech will come into it too. And this isn't going to be conspiracy theory stuff at all. I'm just trying to point out the risks inherent in distributing content on platforms. So these are just kind of some thoughts I put out there, or I put together, I should say, about how I perceive the zeitgeist of the age, right? Current meta trends in online media distribution. So I think we're seeing an increased wariness on the part of regular users towards big tech. And by big tech platforms, I just mean big networks like Twitter, let's say, Twitter X, that, with the arrival of Elon Musk has seemed a bit crazy. Even just as a regular user, you're seeing now to get if you want to be verified, you need to pay, or they're trying to make you pay. And if you do pay, they're looking for more money for this and for that. Now people can see your tweet analytics, which is, if you don't get a big reach, it's embarrassing. If you get a big reach, it makes other people's tweets look good just because they got picked up. And it's kind of made a lot of us think, I think, that, wow, okay, platforms are really kind of something that we don't really have control over, and the functionality can change. Stuff can become paywalled. You have to pay for it. Features can change. So there's a good case to be made that you'd never want to depend on platforms. And as a content creator, in this little presentation, chat, video, whatever you want to call it, I want to just kind of talk about the various ways that there are to address this. And then I'll talk about the kind of nuts and bolts of what I would call a prudent data management approach here. So there's a great saying, don't build your digital castle on someone else's land. And that's really the problem that is inherent in distributing via platforms. The platforms, whether we're talking about YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn for that matter, right? Fairly innocuous, but it still is a platform. That's someone else's land. If you're trying to build your platform through posting on LinkedIn, they can really screw you over if they want to, right? A lot of the interpretation of what's considered hate speech and violations of terms and conditions is really open to subjective interpretation. And that creates a problem if you want to depend on your content being available through that channel to an audience. So there's an inherent problem, I would say, in this, and we need to think about what we can do. A lot of people are thinking about what they can do to try to mitigate this problem. So there's different possible reactions, ranging from attempting to buy your own land. In the metaphor of the castle here, this would be something like self-hosting. And if you really want to go into the technical details, the best form of self-hosting, I guess, is owning your infrastructure. you might trust a data center, or you might actually want to have it somewhere you physically own, like a house, for instance. And we'll look at various sort of risk profiles there. Or you can just accept the oversight of third-party platforms, which is what I do, because I don't really personally create anything very controversial. But it's not that hard to kind of wade into controversial territory. For instance, some of the stuff I've posted about Israel has drawn up various flags on YouTube, because I've included videos from October 7th, not graphical ones, but even then that will flag as restricted, and sometimes I've heard people having their videos taken down from YouTube. So this isn't really a hypothetical concern. This is something that is a real thing going on platforms. So why don't we all just like run our own YouTubes, right? Instead of putting our videos on this random company in the US that none of us really know, and over which we can agree we've no control, why don't we just set up our own YouTube? So the problem is, it's not that easy. It's not that hard to like run a website. Let's say my website, I have a few domain names, and let's say I want to put this video up on danielrosehill.com, right? For me to upload this MP4 file and to create a web page that will play it back, and then I can send that out to my email list or my friends. That's not an Everest challenge technically, but the problem is scaling. Let's say I want to do that times 100. Well, those megabytes become gigabytes, become terabytes, become petabytes, etc., and that becomes very expensive. Because what YouTube do, any platform actually that offers unlimited storage to users, which is what YouTube does, and people, I think that doesn't get enough attention. That is actually completely technically crazy. It's unfeasible. I don't know how they do it. Because storage costs. I presume it's baked into the YouTube monetization model that the revenue from the advertisers covers the cost of the infrastructure. But that's kind of an exception to the case, that it's not usually feasible for any tech company to offer unlimited storage of any kind. And again, when we're talking about storage, we're just talking about bits and bytes. We're talking about binary in different configurations, right? I'm not really talking here about just videos or podcasts or graphics or, any data, right? It all costs money. It has to be hosted on some kind of storage, and storage, even cheap storage like tape, costs money. You have to have power. If it's a on-demand file system, there needs to be electricity, which costs money. There needs to be someone managing the data farm. So as it costs money, to get something for free, it's an unsustainable free lunch, what YouTube do at the moment. And I would not be surprised if YouTube enforce some kind of limits in the future about how much data users can store. Perhaps it's going to cost money. Some video platforms have already gone down that road of you have to pay to upload. So that's really the issue, is that, and there's really another one, is that, and this is the third point here, that when you are trying to build an audience, you want to go where people might find your stuff. If you just set up danielrosehill.com or petermurphy.com and you upload your MP4s there, you would just be relying on organic discovery via SEO for people to watch your videos, and that no one might watch your videos. I'm not saying, by the way, that tens of thousands of people watch my YouTube videos, but it's still rewarding to get even a couple of 100 views and get a few nice emails from people. And that would be a lot harder not using a platform like this. So there's a really big incentive for people to stick with a platform that is built up and already has traction, which creates strong barriers to entry for new platforms and kind of lends itself to a concentration of power, which is what we've seen with Google products in the social media domain. Now, the issue as well with the self-hosting route, another problem is that the open source software, like there are YouTube clones out there that you can just host yourself. Take this from someone who's been using Linux for, I think, like 20 years at this point. Open source tends to kind of suck. And that's just unfortunately reality. When there's no money going into a project to pay developers, you tend to get buggy code and buggy products. So you can try build your own thing, but if it sucks and your audience can't watch your videos, they're not going to stick around. So just to give to take this out from the abstract to the concrete a bit here, some examples would be Donald Trump writing mad things altogether on Twitter and getting kicked off. and then deciding, screw that. I'm going to start at my own thing and calling that Truth Social. So that's a classic example. And obviously someone with Trump has a lot deeper pockets than your average person, to put it mildly. But this is just kind of, I think, a paradigm for what can happen. And if we extend this concept, okay, Donald Trump did this one network. What happens if there was 100,000 splinter networks from Twitter, right? We start to see that we'd get a very, very fragmented social media world that would be quite confusing. I think that's another reason the platforms seem to work, right? People, if you take Reddit, for example, Reddit is just like millions of individual discussion forums clobbered together. And it's great because if you use Reddit, you have a Reddit account. You don't need to have an account on, I don't know, the data hoarder subreddit I post on, and then on the Linux subreddit, your account. So for users, there's a lot of users like these platforms because you don't have to follow a bunch of people on different places. So splintering is really, I think it's not the way to go personally. I do think we need to rethink how the relationship between the platforms and the content creators, but I don't think that splintering is the right path for in general. So then you take BitChute. Just to give another example, BitChute was founded in 2017, and this is an example of what I would call an anything goes alternative to YouTube. I'm sure they have some rules, but judging by the disgusting anti-Semitic content I encountered there yesterday, I put together a video on Rumble of Gemma O'Doherty's anti-Semitic screeds. And that was not able to go on YouTube, and it's crazy. They're just flat out anti-Semitism on BitChute. If you are gay, I'm sure you'll discover that there is horrible anti-gay and LGBT stuff and anti-Catholic stuff and Islamophobic stuff and everything. So because I'm Jewish, anti-Semitism is the hate speech that kind of shocks me, but it's really across the board on platforms like that. So, and just mad conspiracy theories. Then you've got Rumble, and it says they're going to be immune to cancel culture. So these are just examples of, I would say, the splintering. On the first case, an individual platform, and in the second case, a emerging platform. So we can see the problem we can see kind of the problems with too much censorship. Some people would say YouTube is overly censored. And we can see the problems with no censorship, like BitChute, that it just evolves into something crazy. So I think there's a case to be made that we need to find a middle ground in terms of platforms. And I would tend to be in favor of less censorship rather than more. How platform censorship works in practice. So you might have a conflict between what the creators consider to be fair game. Like yesterday when I was trying to post someone else's hate speech to highlight the fact that what it looks like, I thought it was quite interesting to see that kind of hate speech being delivered. Personally, what are they saying? How are they capturing an audience? And then the other one is kind of ideologies, and in this case YouTube might say no, that's not fair game. I could say, well, take Memory as an example of a organization that's on YouTube to highlight other people's hate speech. Should that be banned from YouTube? It's an open question, I would say. So conflicts exist and then you've got the kind of ideological conflicts when you have a right-wing platform censoring left-wing people, and people just misaligned on their views, censoring one another, and that's something we've seen as well. I would say we've seen emerging. So just some caveats to what I'm going to say here. I'm going to talk about ways, just quick suggestions from. Now we're going to get into the technical half of the slides, talking about ways that I think you can mitigate this threat. And yes, everyone can use these, whether you're trying to stash hate speech content or like me, you're trying to just stash good stuff and you don't want to, but you're worried about being subject to censorship by platforms. So both sets of people, but that's just the way it goes often. Some data conservation best practices. So we're going to be looking at really kind of boring stuff from the world of backup and archival that I've talked about so many times on this channel. And but we'll just look at how they can be applied in the context we're talking about today of creators. So here's what you should not do. And I think most people know this. But I don't think everyone is really kind of even thinks about this stuff, right? So let's say you're a YouTube creator, you make your YouTube video, you might make it. Let's scale up a bit. You might make a documentary, right? Might be months of effort for you to produce this thing. Then you put it up to YouTube, and then you say, "Great, YouTube has it." And here I have to roll out another tech aphorism, which is that the cloud is not backup. The cloud is just here. Tech aphorism 3: the cloud is just somebody else's computer. So the mistake here would be to say, "That's wonderful. My video is online. Open up the beer. Let's celebrate. The documentary's out there. People can watch it on YouTube. All is good. I don't need this old file on my computer." And some people actually do this, and that's the problem. That is not what you want to do. And we'll look at what you should do instead and what the problem is. So why is that a problem in the first place? So in this example, there's only one copy of this data in existence now. It's only on YouTube. Yes, YouTube is backed by complicated cloud storage, and there may be internal duplication going on, and practically speaking, it may also be on a what do YouTube call it again? I forget AWS's architecture, but those servers that are cache servers or something, or edge servers. In practically speaking, the data may actually be on a few different places. But so long as you can't access that to get your own data out, I'd say that's a moot point. However YouTube or Google wants to internally organize the data they hold, that's their prerogative. But it's not your data really that they're spreading around. It's their own backups of your data. It's also subject to YouTube terms and conditions, right? And again, I suggest there's a good deal of subjectivity involved here. Another issue here with YouTube, just this specific example, is that when you upload your video to YouTube, you actually can't get it back. You can't get back the original version. If you download your video from YouTube Studio, it's after YouTube compression. You'll notice the files are a lot smaller. And if you do a Google takeout, you'll also get back your compressed videos. So the original file is not in existence anymore. You can't write to YouTube and say, "Hey, I uploaded this video. I see it's being compressed. I forgot to take a copy. Can I have my copy, please?" No, there's no mechanism for that. It won't work. Finally, and I think this is a really crazy one. If YouTube removes your content, they say, "Hey, this violated our terms and conditions." They don't give you your video back. They don't say, "Here's the video that was in violation. Here's the file, just so you have it. Good luck. Don't violate our terms." No, they, as far as I know, and this has only ever happened to me once when one of the exposing anti-Semitism videos I tried to do. So I haven't seen the end of that yet. But from what I've read, there is no, you can't download. There's no download button on the. It's just like, "We didn't like that video. Boom, it's gone. Sorry." So I say this is a little bit crazy when you think about it. But really, YouTube could say, "No, you should have saved your own data. The idiot is you." So here's the way you should do it. And I'm not saying that this is the only way. People might have suggestions for other ways, but this is for people who haven't seen this before. Or I call it our old friend because I've talked about this so many times. The 3-2-1 backup rule is a very basic level of backup best practice. Is 3 copies of data always, 2 on different media, and 1 offsite. That means someone else's some other geographic location, so that if let's say you had your data here and there was a hurricane, or there was a fire, or your dog. I don't know. Just think of ridiculous data destruction scenarios as you please. That's gone. Well, at least you have the one offsite. By the way, this can apply to a lot of different things. We can be talking about here, I don't know, a record collection that you only have on vinyl, right? Let's just say. You might want to back that up. How would you back that up? That would actually be a really interesting backup project, because you'd have to digitize the vinyl to get it over the internet to put it off site somewhere, but it could be done. Absolutely. Where there's a will, there's a way. Knowing how dedicated some vinyl collectors are, I'm sure there's people who've backed up their vinyl collections. So let's look at the right way to do it now. So we have our data onto our streaming platforms. YouTube, I put Rumble, BitChute, and 2 other ones, Vimeo, just for, you get the idea. And we have it locally, we've kept it locally, and we've also offsided it. Okay, this is called offsiding, moving into the offsite storage. Now, just another detail here about who actually owns. I think this is a really interesting question. If you're a YouTuber and you put this, let's take this video. Do I own the video? Is this my intellectual property? Or because I uploaded it to YouTube, does YouTube now have full rights over this video? You'd have to actually read through the terms and conditions to really get your answer there. Basically, the answer is that generally speaking, from a licensing standpoint, the streaming platforms usually only retain the license. You still own it, but it's in their cloud. But from a technical standpoint, I don't think, because we looked at before, we looked at YouTube deleting your videos, we looked at YouTube compressing your videos and deleting the originals. So from a technical standpoint, whether you still own the IP or not, it's kind of a moot point, because YouTube are going to do really what they want with your data. So we looked at the next consideration here in the kind of whole, if we're looking at risk with cloud data from a holistic standpoint, let's also talk about the offsiding process here, right? Your storage can be owned or rented. Storage you own, I'm talking about stuff you physically own, what we used to call on-prem infrastructure in the world of tech, what we still do actually. That can be an NAS, it can be an LTO library, it can be a computer. You can just have it backed up on an old laptop, right? We're not necessarily talking about sophisticated, but we could be talking about sophisticated. An LTO library is pretty cool. I've seen some pictures of ones with robots and amazing tech. Or it can be rented, like the cloud, or even if it's not paid for, it's free Google Drive storage, it's still someone else's computer, right? So I would say it can be owned, or what's a word for rented that encompasses freebie? I don't know. Stored, hosted. Hosted would have been a better word. So it can be owned or hosted. So really owned, I would say, is safer from the standpoint of we're not relying on third parties, but it's more difficult usually because you have to set up servers or buy an NAS and set up an NAS, all this stuff. It's not, for folks who are into tech, this stuff might seem pretty easy, but for people who are not into technology, this might seem like a lot of work. So it's harder. It's probably going to be more expensive, I would say, versus, let's say, look at the cost of Backblaze cloud storage. It's ridiculously cheap, almost unfeasibly cheap. And about the cheapest we can do as consumers maybe is getting some hard drives. Although I think on a per gigabyte basis, optical actually comes close. But whatever, moot point. So owning it is going to be safer from a third-party dependence, less risky, but it's also going to be more work and more expense. And just to visualize this, right, when we're talking about hosted versus owned, on the left we have a data center somewhere in the US, right? Do you want your data to live here? On the right we have an NAS, standard Synology NAS, and we have my random optical media library, right? So that's the difference. You can do both hosted or both owned for your backups. So just to remember, though, that if you are using the cloud for backup, and this isn't actually an argument against it at all. I'm not trying to turn people off the idea using the cloud, but just remember that backup is your responsibility. So you should have your on-site backup of your content. If you are doing this, but they actually, as I said before, right? If you have your data in Google Cloud and you screwed up and you deleted it, that's not the cloud provider's responsibility. This is Amazon's shared model of responsibility, where they divide what the consumer is responsible for and AWS is responsible for. And what we can see here is that one of the consumer responsibilities is the management of their data, and that includes backups as a subset of that. So how would we do? Remember we talked about our bad YouTube backup workflow where we're lazy and we deleted the video and whatever. So here's what we should do instead. You make the video, you put it up to YouTube, it goes out on the internet. Next thing we want to do is back up that video file locally. It doesn't really matter here. There's different approaches. We can use our NAS or our whatever we want to use, different opinions about that. And then we can back up to whatever we want to use, whether it's hosted or owned or whatever. But whatever we've done, it's a lot better than what we started out with, right? Because now we have 3 copies of this data. One of them is offsite, one is on-site, and one is on the platform. And I just said here, if it's crazy important, we could do another offsite or 3, right? There's no limit. Like you could back up to 3 clouds if you wanted to, 3 duplicates. You could have one in Amazon, one in Backblaze, one in your own server. Some people would say that's pointless. I would tend to say it is actually. I would say just do one offsite, but some people like to do more. So how does this relate to, so let's get back to free speech and censorship that we started out with. So if a platform were to remove your content because it fell foul of their terms and conditions, you would be okay in this scenario. That's a big reason why I advocate for it, and that's why I do it myself personally, right? You can survive the removal of your content even if the platform doesn't give you your data back, because you have your 2 copies. So YouTube deletes your data, okay, fine, just go back to your archive or go back to your NAS, pull it up and put it on Rumble, or Rumble deletes it, put it on, etc. Do you see what I mean? That's what you can do once you have these originals. That's why it's vital to keep them. And then if your on-site isn't available, this is why the off-site's also important. If that happened, then you've still got one safeguard. You've got your off-site to do. So this is what it looks like in a schematic. This isn't what it looks like in a schematic. This is an additional thing that some people might do. If you're thinking about doing this, check the license. Like if you're monetized on YouTube, they might not allow you to put your stuff up on I don't know actually, because my main YouTube channel is monetized, but I haven't duplicated stuff from it onto either of these. But for an unmonetized channel like this one currently at the time I'm uploading this video, I think it would be okay. I don't think YouTube has an exclusive license. But this is where like checking all these licenses actually becomes something you should do, those kind of fine print that nobody really ever reads. But that's one further de-risking approach, I would say. And for this video, I'm going to just, because I want to practice what I preach, I'm going to put it up on Rumble as well as maybe BitChute as well. So some closing thoughts about all this. This isn't really about like being ultra paranoid or thinking the sky is going to collapse or thinking that, YouTube is going to vanish tomorrow. It's more about getting your data in a way that you are not dependent. You can use the platforms. And again, I recommend using the platforms because as we saw, trying to reinvent the wheel is really, really difficult. It's not about not using the platforms. It's about using them in a way that you're not dependent on them. We talked about not trusting the platform as a reliable copy of your data. We're doing our 2 and 1 offsite. We talked about the technical strategies for de-risking content publication. And also just wanted to mention, because one of the concerns that I flagged here was that the platforms are owned and can have their own agendas, if you will, and biases. There are some decentralized platforms that are trying to tackle this the other way around by saying, let's build a platform that is truly decentralized. And there are ways that if the data was distributed, it might be safe. But I would say whatever you're using, if it's someone else's platform, decentralized could turn back to centralized. It would be a good idea to do this for the moment. That would be my recommendation. Hope this video has been interesting if you're a content creator looking to protect your data while still using the amazing streaming platforms available to us today. If you have any thoughts of your own, please leave them in the comments box wherever you're watching this. Until the next video, have a great day.